Steven Seagal was enjoying a rare quiet afternoon, trying to stay away from attention. After finishing a simple meal at a small local restaurant, he stepped outside, hoping to enjoy a peaceful walk before heading home. A few people recognized him, whispering and smiling, but Steven kept things low-key, nodding politely and continuing on his way. Just as he reached the sidewalk, something unexpected happened. A little girl, no older than 7 or 8, walked straight toward him. Her clothes were clean but worn, and her face looked tired, as if she hadn't slept well in days. She hesitated for a moment, then gently grabbed his hand. Steven stopped, surprised. The girl looked up at him with worried eyes and said quietly, "Please, follow me home." For a second, Steven thought he misunderstood her. He looked around, expecting to see her parents nearby, but no one seemed connected to her. People walking past slowed down, curious about the strange scene unfolding. Steven bent down to her level and spoke calmly. "Where are your parents? Why are you alone?" But the girl shook her head, gripping his hand tighter. "Please, you have to come. Mom needs help." Something in her voice felt real. Not playful. Not attention-seeking. It was fear mixed with hope, as if she had finally found someone willing to listen. Steven felt conflicted. Following a stranger's child could easily lead to misunderstanding, but his instincts told him this situation was serious. The girl looked exhausted, and it seemed she had already asked others for help without success. People nearby whispered, some even recording on their phones, unsure what Steven would do next. Moments like this test a person's character. Sometimes, life places us in situations where a simple decision, to walk away or to help, can change someone's future forever. Steven looked at the girl again. Her small hand trembled slightly, as if she was afraid he might refuse. And in that moment, he realized this wasn't just a random encounter. Something was truly wrong. And what Steven discovered after deciding to follow her would shock everyone who later heard the story. Steven Seagal stood there for a moment, still unsure what the right decision was. The little girl continued holding his hand, looking up at him as if he were her last hope. Around them, people passed by without paying much attention, while a few curious onlookers slowed down, sensing something unusual was happening. Steven glanced around once more, hoping to spot a worried parent searching for their child. But no one seemed to be looking for her. The girl was clearly alone. He took a slow breath and made a careful decision. "All right," he said gently. "I'll walk with you. But we stay in public places, okay?" The girl nodded quickly, relief washing over her face. Without wasting another second, she began walking, guiding Steven down the street. As they moved away from the busy shopping area, Steven pulled out his phone and quietly informed a nearby security contact that he was helping a lost child, just in case things turned complicated. Years of experience had taught him to stay cautious, even when his instincts told him to help. They walked for several minutes. The lively streets slowly turned quieter. Bright store windows disappeared, replaced by older buildings and worn sidewalks. Steven noticed the environment changing. Fewer people, smaller shops, and houses that looked like they had seen better days. The girl walked quickly, almost afraid he might change his mind and leave. Steven tried to start a conversation to understand the situation better. "What's your name?" he asked calmly. "Anna," she replied softly, without stopping. "And where's your father, Anna?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the ground as they walked. "He doesn't live with us anymore," she finally whispered. Steven felt a quiet heaviness in her voice. He didn't push further, sensing the topic was painful. As they continued walking, a shopkeeper standing outside his store recognized the girl and called out, "Hey, little one, everything okay?" Anna just nodded quickly and kept walking. Steven slowed down and asked the man, "Do you know her?" The shopkeeper sighed. "She's been walking around asking people for help since morning. Most folks just ignored her. Thought she was begging or something." Steven felt a small knot form in his stomach. How desperate must things be at home for a child to ask strangers for help? Sometimes, people see suffering but choose to look away because they're busy, uncomfortable, or unsure how to respond. Yet, for someone in real trouble, being ignored can feel worse than the problem itself. They turned into a narrow street lined with small, aging houses. Paint peeled from walls, and broken fences surrounded tiny yards. It was clear this neighborhood struggled financially. Steven noticed Anna's grip tightening again. They were getting close. Before reaching the house, Steven decided to ask carefully, "Anna, what kind of help does your mom need?" The girl slowed down slightly but didn't look at him. "Mom says everything is okay," she murmured. "But she cries when she thinks I'm sleeping." Steven's chest tightened. They stopped in front of a small, worn-down house at the end of the street. The front door looked old, and the windows were partly covered with thin curtains. Anna turned toward him, her eyes filled with hope and fear. "Please," she said quietly, "help my mom." Steven realized whatever waited behind that door was serious. And he wasn't prepared for what he was about to see. If you saw a child asking strangers for help like Anna did, would you stop to help, or would you be afraid to get involved? And tell us in the comments, which country and city are you watching from right now? Steven stood quietly in front of the small house, looking at the faded paint and the broken wooden steps leading to the door. The neighborhood around them felt heavy, as if every home carried its own silent struggles. A cold wind passed through the narrow street, and Steven noticed Anna shiver slightly, though she tried to hide it. She looked up at him again, almost as if she feared he might leave now that they had arrived. "Is your mom inside?" Steven asked softly. Anna nodded but didn't move toward the door yet. Instead, she seemed unsure, her small fingers nervously twisting the edge of her worn jacket. Steven sensed there was more she wanted to say. He knelt beside her so they were at eye level. "Anna, you can tell me what's going on. I'm here now." For a moment, she stayed quiet. Then, slowly, the words began to come out. "Mom got sick," she whispered. "She lost her job at the restaurant." Steven listened carefully, saying nothing, letting her speak at her own pace. "She tried to find another job," Anna continued, "but nobody called back. She says it's okay, but we don't have much food now." Her voice trembled, and she looked down at her shoes. Steven felt a tightness in his chest. He had seen hardship in many places around the world, but hearing it from a child's perspective made it hit differently. Anna kicked a small stone on the ground as she continued, almost as if she was confessing a secret. "Sometimes Mom tells me she already ate, but I know she didn't. She gives me everything." Steven swallowed quietly, imagining the mother pretending to be full so her daughter wouldn't worry. Many parents suffer silently, hiding their pain just to keep their children feeling safe. The world rarely sees these sacrifices, but they happen every day behind closed doors. Anna continued, her voice softer now. "Last night the lights almost went out. Mom cried when she thought I was asleep. She said she doesn't know what to do." Steven stayed silent, letting the weight of her words settle. The little girl then said something that struck him deeply. "I asked people for help today. Some walked away. Some said they were busy. One man told me not to bother strangers." She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to stay brave. "But then I saw you. Mom watches your movies sometimes. She says heroes help people." Steven felt humbled by her innocence. In movies, problems were solved in 2 hours. Real life was different. Real problems didn't disappear with a fight scene or a heroic speech. Yet here he was, being asked to play the role of a hero in real life. Anna looked at him again, her eyes filled with fragile hope. "Mom says heroes only live on TV," she said quietly. "But I think, maybe they're real." Steven didn't know what to say. Fame and action roles suddenly felt meaningless compared to the responsibility standing in front of him. At that moment, a neighbor peeked through a nearby window, watching curiously. Another person walked by slowly, glancing at Steven and Anna standing outside the small house. It was clear people in the neighborhood knew this family was struggling, yet everyone seemed trapped in their own problems. Sometimes communities suffer quietly together, each person hoping someone else will step in first. Anna suddenly grabbed Steven's hand again. "Please don't leave," she whispered. He gently squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." She finally climbed the small steps and opened the door slowly. It creaked loudly, revealing a dim hallway inside. The air that drifted out felt cold and stale, as if heating or electricity had barely been working. Before stepping inside, Steven paused for a moment. Whatever waited behind that door wasn't just a struggling family. It was a reminder of how easily people fall through society's cracks, unnoticed and unheard. And Steven realized something important. Today, this little girl didn't need a movie star. She needed someone willing to listen. Do you think people today are too busy to notice families struggling around them? And if you were in Steven's place, would you have followed Anna home or walked away? Share your thoughts in the comments. Steven stepped inside slowly, ducking slightly as he entered the small hallway behind Anna. The air inside the house felt cold and heavy, carrying a faint smell of dampness mixed with something else, the unmistakable scent of a place where life had become a daily struggle. The hallway light flickered weakly overhead. Paint peeled from the walls, and the wooden floor creaked under each step. Steven noticed shoes neatly placed near the door, showing that despite hardship, someone still cared about keeping things orderly. Anna closed the door quietly behind them. "Mom," she called softly. No answer came at first. Steven followed Anna into what appeared to be both the living room and kitchen combined. The room was small, barely furnished. A worn couch sat against the wall, its fabric torn in places. A tiny table stood nearby with only one chair, and in the corner, an old refrigerator hummed faintly. Steven's eyes naturally moved toward the kitchen counter. There was almost nothing there. No groceries. No fresh food. Just a half loaf of bread and a nearly empty jar of peanut butter. The sink held only a couple of plates, carefully washed and drying, suggesting they didn't have many dishes to begin with. Anna walked quickly toward a closed bedroom door. "Mom, I'm back," she said gently. A weak voice answered from inside. "Anna, where did you go, sweetheart?" Anna opened the door and stepped in. Steven hesitated for a moment before following quietly. The bedroom was even smaller. Thin curtains blocked most of the daylight, and the room felt stuffy. On a narrow bed lay Anna's mother, a woman probably in her early 30s but looking much older from exhaustion. She sat up slowly when she noticed Steven standing behind her daughter. Her eyes widened in shock. I'm sorry," she stammered, trying to fix her hair and sit straighter. "Anna, who is this?" Anna walked to the bed and held her mother's hand. "Mom, he's here to help." The mother looked confused, then embarrassed as realization slowly dawned. Steven spoke calmly. "I'm sorry to intrude. Anna found me outside and asked for help. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay." The woman's face turned pale. She clearly hadn't expected her daughter to bring a stranger home, especially someone recognizable. "Oh my God," she whispered, now recognizing him. "You're Steven Seagal." She quickly looked down, ashamed. "I'm so sorry. Anna shouldn't have bothered you." Steven shook his head gently. "She didn't bother me." The woman tried to stand but winced slightly, gripping her side before sitting back down. Steven noticed how weak she seemed. "Are you all right?" he asked. She forced a small smile. "Just tired. It's nothing." But the room told a different story. Beside the bed sat a stack of unpaid bills. An envelope labeled Final Notice lay partially opened. Another paper mentioned electricity payment overdue. Steven didn't need to read everything to understand. Life had cornered this family. The mother sighed quietly, her voice trembling. "I lost my job 3 months ago. Restaurant closed down. I've been looking everywhere, but no one's hiring." She paused, trying to keep her composure. "I got sick recently, couldn't even go out to look for work. I thought things would get better. I didn't want Anna to worry." Anna squeezed her mother's hand. Steven noticed how the woman avoided looking directly at him, as if ashamed of her situation. Pride often keeps people silent, even when they desperately need help. Many parents carry impossible burdens alone, afraid of judgment or rejection. "I tried to keep things normal for her," the mother continued. "But we're running out of everything." Her voice cracked, and she quickly wiped her eyes, embarrassed to cry in front of a stranger. "I never wanted to ask anyone for help." Steven felt a deep respect for her honesty and strength despite everything. He looked around the small room again, thin blankets, cracked walls, and a heater that looked like it hadn't worked in years. Then he noticed something else. On a small shelf stood a few old DVDs, stacked neatly. Among them were some of his own movies. Steven felt an unexpected lump in his throat. This family had watched stories where he played heroes who saved the day. But real life didn't have scripts or guaranteed happy endings. Until now. He looked at Anna, then at her exhausted mother. And in that quiet moment, Steven realized something important. They didn't need sympathy. They needed real help. And he had already decided he wasn't walking away. For a few quiet seconds, the small room remained silent. Anna's mother tried to regain her composure, wiping away tears and forcing a polite smile, clearly uncomfortable with someone witnessing her family's struggles. Steven understood that feeling. Hard times often come with shame, even when they shouldn't. Many people prefer to suffer quietly rather than admit they need help. He spoke calmly, making sure his tone felt respectful, not pitying. "You don't need to apologize," he said gently. "Life hits hard sometimes. It can happen to anyone." Anna's mother looked down at her hands. "I just wanted to fix things myself," she whispered. "I didn't want Anna worrying." Steven nodded. "That means you're a good mother." The simple sentence broke whatever strength she had been holding together. Tears rolled down her face as she tried to hide them, turning away slightly. Anna hugged her tightly. Steven took a step back, giving them a moment, then quietly pulled out his phone. He moved toward the doorway so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable hearing his calls. Years of connections and experience meant he knew people who could act quickly. First, he called a local contact who worked with community assistance programs. "Hey," Steven said quietly. "I need emergency grocery support delivered today. Full supplies for at least a month. No publicity, just help." He listened briefly, then nodded. "Yes, today. As soon as possible." He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "Can you check rental assistance options for a family in urgent need? They're behind on payments. I'll cover what's necessary for now, but I want them connected to long-term help." Another short pause, then confirmation. Next came medical support. Steven had noticed how weak Anna's mother looked. "Can you arrange a doctor visit?" Quietly. "She needs proper medical attention." He finished his calls within minutes, handling each conversation calmly, as if organizing everyday tasks. But the impact of those calls would change everything for this family. When he returned to the room, Anna and her mother looked at him, unsure what had just happened. Steven offered a small, reassuring smile. "Some help is coming," he said simply. The mother blinked in confusion. "Help? Food deliveries. Someone will also talk to you about rent assistance. And a doctor will check on you soon." For a moment, she didn't react, as if her mind struggled to process what he had just said. Then reality hit. Her hands began to shake, and she covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face again, this time not from fear, but relief. You don't have to do that," she said weakly. Steven shook his head. "Yes, I do." Anna stared at him with wide eyes. "Really?" He knelt beside her. "Really?" The little girl suddenly threw her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "You're a real hero," she whispered. Steven hugged her back gently, but inside, he felt humbled. Heroes in movies defeat villains. Real heroes sometimes just make sure families have food and safety. Anna's mother wiped her tears again. "I don't even know how to thank you." Steven stood and spoke calmly. "You don't owe me anything. Just focus on getting better and taking care of Anna." He looked around the room again, thinking ahead. "There's one more thing," he added. "When you feel ready, I'll help connect you with job opportunities too. Something stable." The woman nodded, overwhelmed. Hope, something she hadn't felt in months, slowly returned to her eyes. Sometimes people don't need miracles. They just need someone to step in before everything collapses. A knock suddenly echoed from the front door. Anna jumped slightly. Steven checked his phone. Faster than expected. "Looks like help already arrived," he said. Anna ran toward the hallway. Steven followed, knowing that when the door opened, this family's life would begin changing in ways they hadn't imagined only hours earlier. And outside, neighbors were starting to notice something unusual happening at the small house at the end of the street. The knock at the door echoed again, louder this time, and Anna hurried down the hallway, her small footsteps quick with excitement and curiosity. Steven followed at a calm pace, watching as she struggled slightly to unlock the door. When it finally opened, 2 delivery workers stood outside holding several large grocery boxes. Behind them, a small van was parked, its back doors open and filled with more supplies. "Delivery for this address," one of the workers said, glancing at a clipboard. Anna's eyes widened in disbelief. "For us?" she asked. Steven nodded gently. "Yes, for you." The workers began carrying boxes inside, bags of rice, vegetables, canned goods, milk, bread, fresh fruit, and other essentials. Items the family hadn't been able to afford for months now filled the tiny kitchen counter. As the deliveries continued, curious neighbors began stepping outside their homes. In a quiet neighborhood like this, unusual activity quickly attracted attention. Mrs. Gomez, who lived across the street, crossed her arms and whispered to another neighbor, "What's going on over there?" "I don't know," the man replied. "But I think that's Steven Seagal." Soon, more people gathered along the sidewalk, watching as box after box entered Anna's home. Some pulled out their phones, recording the unexpected scene. Inside the house, Anna ran excitedly between the kitchen and hallway. "Mom, look. We have food," she shouted happily. Her mother slowly walked out of the bedroom, still weak but curious. When she saw the groceries covering the counter and table, she froze in disbelief. Tears instantly filled her eyes. This can't be real," she whispered. Steven simply smiled. "It's real." A second vehicle pulled up outside. This time, a man in a neat jacket stepped out, holding paperwork. He knocked and introduced himself politely. "Ma'am, I'm here regarding rental assistance support. We've been informed your family needs help." Anna's mother looked stunned, turning to Steven in confusion. "You did all this?" she asked softly. Steven shrugged slightly. "Just made a few calls." Outside, the small crowd grew. People whispered excitedly, recognizing the action star now standing inside the humble home. A local police patrol car, noticing the gathering crowd, slowly approached. One officer stepped out, curious about the situation. "What's going on here?" he asked a neighbor. "That's Steven Seagal," someone replied. "He's helping Anna's family." The officer looked surprised and walked closer, peeking through the open door before recognizing Steven himself. Inside, Anna hugged her mother tightly as workers finished unloading supplies. Steven noticed neighbors watching from outside and stepped onto the small porch. People immediately started clapping softly, some smiling, others visibly emotional. Phones recorded everything. Steven raised a hand politely, asking for quiet. He spoke calmly, not like a celebrity, but like a neighbor talking to his community. "Sometimes," he began, "people around us are struggling, and we don't even notice. Not because we're bad people, but because everyone is busy surviving their own problems." The crowd listened silently. "But families like this don't need pity," Steven continued. "They need support. A small act of kindness can change someone's entire future." The police officer nodded respectfully, clearly impressed. Steven added one more thought. Helping someone doesn't need cameras or applause. It just needs humanity. For a moment, the crowd remained silent, then applause grew louder. Some neighbors wiped away tears. Anna stepped outside and wrapped her arms around Steven's leg, smiling proudly. "He helped my mom," she told the neighbors. Steven smiled and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. At that moment, several people realized something important. The action hero they watched on screen wasn't just playing a hero. Today, he had become one in real life. And though Steven clearly wasn't seeking attention, videos recorded by neighbors were already being shared online. Within hours, this quiet act of kindness would spread far beyond this small neighborhood. And Steven, true to his nature, prepared to leave quietly, unaware that his simple decision to follow a little girl home had just inspired thousands of people watching from around the world. Do you think real heroes are the ones who help quietly without expecting praise, or should good deeds be shared to inspire others? Tell us your opinion in the comments. By the time Steven quietly left the neighborhood later that afternoon, the small street had already begun returning to its normal calm. Neighbors slowly went back inside their homes, conversations fading, but the feeling in the air had changed. Something hopeful had happened there. Inside Anna's house, the atmosphere was completely different from just a few hours earlier. The kitchen table, once nearly empty, was now filled with groceries. Fresh food sat neatly stacked in cabinets. The refrigerator, once nearly bare, hummed quietly as it cooled milk, vegetables, and meals for the coming days. Anna moved around the kitchen with excitement, opening the fridge again and again just to make sure everything was real. "Mom, look! We have juice!" she shouted happily. Her mother sat at the table, still overwhelmed. She watched her daughter smile in a way she hadn't seen for months. The constant fear and stress that had weighed on her chest for so long suddenly felt lighter. Sometimes, hope returns quietly, not with loud miracles, but with simple relief, knowing tomorrow will be okay. Later that evening, Anna's mother received calls confirming medical assistance and support programs that would help them get back on their feet. A local employment office also scheduled an interview for her later in the week. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel frightening. Meanwhile, outside their home, the story was spreading faster than anyone expected. Videos recorded by neighbors had already reached social media. Clips showed grocery deliveries arriving, Steven speaking calmly to residents, and Anna hugging him on the porch. Within hours, millions of people began watching and sharing the footage. Comments flooded in from around the world. "Respect to Steven Seagal. This is what real heroes look like. More celebrities should do this. That little girl is brave." News outlets soon picked up the story. Headlines praised Steven not for movie roles, but for compassion. But what surprised many viewers most was one thing. Steven never posted about it himself. No interviews. No announcements. No attempts to take credit. The story spread entirely because witnesses felt inspired. The following day, reporters tried contacting him, but his response was simple. "I just helped a family. Anyone could do the same." Back in the neighborhood, something else beautiful happened. Neighbors who had once quietly watched Anna's family struggle began checking in more often. One neighbor offered occasional babysitting help. Another brought homemade meals. Someone helped repair their broken fence. Sometimes, kindness inspires more kindness. A week later, Anna's mother began working again, slowly rebuilding her life. Medical treatment improved her health, and the stress that once filled their home started fading away. One evening, Anna sat beside her mother on the couch watching television. One of Steven Seagal's movies happened to be playing. Anna smiled proudly. "See, Mom, heroes are real." Her mother hugged her tightly, tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude. Stories like this remind us of something important. Strength isn't always about fighting or winning battles. Sometimes, the greatest strength is simply helping someone stand back up when life knocks them down. And all of this began with a small, brave girl who refused to give up until someone listened. Before the story ends, think about this. How many people around us might need help but are too afraid to ask? And how often do we walk past someone without realizing what they're going through? Sometimes, changing a life starts with stopping for just one moment. If you believe no one should struggle alone and kindness still matters in this world, type respect in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring real-life stories.